Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we're jumping into something really important, but maybe a bit overlooked sometimes when people think about IVF. Yeah, when you dig into the research around fertility treatments, there's this huge connection that keeps popping up between your metabolism, like how your body handles energy, and, well, reproductive success. So our mission today, we want to sift through all the complex science about insulin resistance or IR. We're going to unpack what it is, why it can cause such trouble for fertility, and crucially, what you can actually do about it to hopefully boost your chances during IVF.
Okay, so starting right at the basics, insulin resistance, it's essentially like your body's cells aren't listening properly anymore. We all have this hormone, insulin, right? Comes from the pancreas. Its job is to manage blood sugar glucose. Think of insulin as the key that lets glucose into your cells for energy, but with IR, the cells sort of ignore the key. They become resistant, so glucose can't get in easily. And because the cells are yelling for fuel, the pancreas goes into overdrive, pumping out more and more insulin, trying to force the door open. This leads to really high levels of insulin in your blood that's called hyperinsulinemia, and that imbalance is really the heart of the problem, especially for reproduction.
Okay, let's unpack this. So the key isn't working right, and the body's flooding the system with extra keys.
Yeah.
How would someone even realize this is going on? Because you hear about people having this for ages without getting diagnosed with, like, full-blown diabetes, right? What are the little signs?
Yeah, often the early signs are pretty subtle, and they tie right back to that struggle for fuel. One of the big ones is feeling wiped out, really tired, especially after you eat.
Right, because the energy's there in the blood, but it just can't get into the cells.
Exactly. And that starvation signal, it can also show up as feeling hungrier than usual or getting these intense cravings for sweets, for carbs. Your body is just constantly asking for more fuel. Then there's often weight gain, and specifically fat storage right around the middle, the abdomen. Excess insulin is, it's a fat storage hormone, and it tends to put weight there. Oh, and sometimes you might see darker, sort of velvety skin patches, usually on the back of the neck or maybe in the armpits. It's called acanthocysis nigricans. That's a pretty clear visual sign that insulin levels have been high for a while.
Okay, so if someone's noticing those things, or maybe they already know they have PCOS, which I know is super linked to IR, how do doctors actually confirm it? What tests do they use when fertility is the focus?
Right, they look at specific blood markers. The basics are the fasting blood glucose test and, importantly, a fasting insulin test. Because sometimes your glucose might still look normal, but if that fasting insulin is high, that's a big red flag for resistance. They also often use the hemoglobin A1C or HbA1c test. That one's useful because it gives you an average picture of your blood sugar over the last, say, 2 or 3 months. It's not just a snapshot.
And if that A1C is in the pre-diabetes range, like 5.7 to 6.4%, that's relevant here too.
Absolutely relevant. And then there's a calculation they sometimes do, right, to get a more precise measure.
Yes, the HEMIR. It stands for Homeostatic Model Assessment. It's basically a formula using both your fasting glucose and fasting insulin numbers.
You don't need to memorize the math. It's like glucose times insulin divided by 405. But the point is, it gives specialists a single number that estimates how resistant your body is. Knowing the severity helps them plan treatment.
Here's where it gets really interesting. How does this whole sugar and insulin problem cross over and become a fertility problem? How does it disrupt the female hormonal system so badly?
Yeah, the link is incredibly direct. That constant state of high insulin, the hyperinsulinemia we talked about, it's a major hormone disruptor. It's a huge reason why IR is so common in women going through IVF, especially if there's PCOS or obesity involved. See, high insulin directly tells the ovaries to produce more androgens. Those are typically thought of as male hormones like testosterone. But wait, there's more. High insulin also pushes down the levels of a really important protein called SHBG, sex hormone binding globulin.
Okay, hang on. What does SHBG normally do?
SHBG is like the body's hormone cleanup crew. It binds onto excess sex hormones, including those androgens, and makes them inactive. So if high insulin lowers your SHBG, you get hit twice. Your ovaries are making extra androgens, and the system that usually neutralizes them is weakened.
Wow. So high insulin means more disruptive hormones being made and less cleanup happening. That sounds like total chaos for trying to develop an egg.
It is. Total chaos is a good way to put it. All those excess androgens mess with the delicate balance and communication between the brain hormones, FSH and LH. And those hormones are absolutely critical for follicles to develop properly in the ovary. So the end result is often an ovulation, meaning you don't ovulate regularly and really irregular cycles. which, it's tough for fertility treatments to work well.
So that's the impact on the ovaries and ovulation.
Yeah.
But when you get into the actual IVF process, stimulating the ovaries, getting the eggs, fertilizing them, transferring the embryo, does IR throw a wrench in all those steps too?
Oh, absolutely. It hits every stage, starting right down at the level of the egg cell itself. High insulin ramps up something called oxidative stress in the body. Think of it like cellular damage or rust. This really harms the mitochondria inside the egg cells, the oocytes.
Mitochondria, those are like the cell's batteries, right? So if they're damaged,
Exactly. Like weak batteries, eggs need a massive amount of energy to mature properly and to start dividing after fertilization. If the mitochondria aren't healthy, you get poorer egg quality. And that carries through. IR creates a generally less healthy metabolic environment, which isn't great for embryo development either. And then, even if you have a good embryo, it needs to implant. For that, the lining of the uterus, the endometrium, has to be receptive. High insulin messes with this endometrial receptivity. It can reduce blood flow, disrupt the crucial estrogen and progesterone balance needed for the lining, and even promote low-level chronic inflammation there. All bad news for implantation.
that's a lot of potential problems. Sounds like going into IVF with unmanaged IR just stacks the deck against you.
Yeah. It really does increase the risks. We see lower pregnancy rates, lower overall success rates with IVF, and unfortunately, there's a strong link between untreated IR and a higher risk of miscarriage. Plus, there's a greater risk of ovarian hyperstimulation syndrome, or OHSS, during the stimulation phase. That's where the ovaries overreact to the meds. It's especially a concern with PCOS, and the IR makes it worse. Because of all this, fertility doctors often have to adjust the IVF plan, maybe use different protocols like antagonist protocols or lower drug doses, just to try and keep things safer.
Okay, but the really important message here is that IR is manageable. So let's shift to the positive. What can someone proactively do? If you know you have IR, what are the steps, medically and lifestyle-wise, you can take before starting IVF?
Yeah, this is the hopeful part. There's a lot you can do. Medication-wise, metformin is usually the first line. It works in a couple of ways. Helps reduce how much sugar your liver makes, and it makes your body's cells listen better to the insulin you do have. The advice is often to start metformin maybe 3 to 6 months before you plan to start the IVF stimulation drugs, and often you'd stay on it through the cycle too.
Okay, and what about supplements? You hear a lot about those in the fertility world. Anything stand out for IR?
Inositol definitely stands out in the research. Specifically, a combination of myo-inositol and D-chiroinositol seems to help improve how the insulin signaling works.
I know people get confused about the ratios sometimes. Is there a specific blend that seems best?
Yeah, the evidence generally points to a 40-to-1 ratio, 40 parts myo-inositol to 1 part D-chiroinositol. That seems to be the most effective for mimicking what the body does naturally and getting those metabolic benefits. But, medication and supplements are only part of it. The lifestyle stuff is fundamental. Weight management is huge. Even losing just 5 or 10% of your body weight if you're overweight can make a massive difference in insulin sensitivity and really improve IVF outcomes. The aim is usually to get closer to that normal BMI range, like 18.5 to 24.9.
And diet-wise, is it just about cutting out sugar, or is it more nuanced?
It's mainly about keeping blood sugar stable, avoiding those big spikes and crashes. So yeah, a low glycemic index GI diet is key. That means really limiting sugary drinks, sweets, refined carbs, white bread, white pasta, processed snacks. Instead, you want to focus on things that slow down sugar absorption. Healthy fats, lots of fiber from vegetables and whole grains, lean protein, those keep insulin levels more even.
And adding exercise to that.
Oh, absolutely crucial. Regular physical activity, a mix of cardio, like brisk walking or swimming, and some resistance training, like weights or body weight exercises, makes your muscles much better at using glucose. Your muscles literally start pulling more sugar out of your blood, which directly improves insulin sensitivity. And you can see benefits pretty quickly, often within weeks.
Okay, we also need to talk about the elephant in the room with any fertility journey. Stress. Does stress actually make IR worse?
It absolutely can. When you're chronically stressed, your body pumps out more cortisol, and cortisol naturally raises blood sugar levels. So yeah, high stress directly fights against everything else you're doing to improve insulin sensitivity. It makes IR worse. This means managing stress, whether that's through mindfulness, yoga, therapy, even just prioritizing good sleep isn't just nice to have. It's actually a critical part of managing IR for IVF prep. It's tough, I know, managing all this plus IVF anxiety, but it's so important.
We've been focusing mostly on the impact on women. But is IR an issue for male fertility too?
Definitely. It's often overlooked, but IR negatively impacts male fertility as well. Screening the male partner is really recommended. High insulin can increase oxidative stress in men too, damaging sperm DNA. This can lead to poorer sperm motility, how well they swim, and morphology, their shape. Plus, IR can sometimes lower testosterone production, so yeah, getting metabolic health in check is really a team effort for conception.
Okay, last piece. Looking ahead, say IVF works and someone gets pregnant, does having a history of IR, even if it's managed, pose any extra risks during the pregnancy itself?
Yes, it does carry some increased risks that need careful monitoring. Women with IR have a higher chance of developing complications like gestational diabetes mellitus, GDM diabetes during pregnancy, and also preeclampsia, which is a serious condition involving high blood pressure and potential organ issues. So managing IR well before pregnancy not only helps with IVF success, but also significantly reduces these specific long-term risks for both the mother and the baby during the pregnancy.
So what does this all mean? The big takeaway here seems to be that insulin resistance, this metabolic issue, is a really significant factor. It's tied to hormonal imbalances like PCOS. It impacts eggs, the uterus, pregnancy risks. But the crucial part is that it's manageable. Getting diagnosed early and actively working on it seems key for better IVF outcomes and just better long-term health overall.
Exactly. It's a modifiable risk factor, and that's powerful. Addressing diet, exercise, weight, stress, using medications like metformin if needed, these things can genuinely shift the odds in your favor before you even start the IVF treatments themselves.
Okay, now we absolutely have to include this crucial educational disclaimer. Please remember, everything we've talked about today is strictly for educational and informational purposes. It is not medical advice. For any diagnosis, treatment plan, or personal medical guidance about insulin resistance, fertility, or IVF, you must consult with your doctor or a qualified fertility specialist.
Please talk to your healthcare providers. They can assess your specific situation and give you tailored advice.
It really highlights how connected everything is, doesn't it? Your metabolic health, your stress levels, your reproductive system. It suggests that getting your whole body as healthy as possible is just as vital as the amazing clinical science of IVF. Something to think about. And if you do want more information about the complete IVF process itself, you can find a great comprehensive resource guide over at ivfforme.com. Thanks for diving deep with us today. We'll catch you on the next one.